In today's video, I'm going to give you 5 reasons to consider Studio One for your music production. Hi folks, I'm Mike and I do hope you're well. Now over the years I've used many DAWs including Pro Tools, Cubase, Logic Pro and Fruity Loops, and they're all awesome products. Also, regulars to this channel will know that I do recommend Cakewalk in terms of a fully featured program, which is a free product. But in terms of a premium or paid product, I like to use Studio One from Presonus. And in today's video, I'll be giving you my top 5 reasons for using Studio One for your music production. Now I must make clear there are some free versions of Studio One available, but in today's video I'll be talking about the paid version, which is Studio One Professional. Also, I'd like to make clear that some of these features are also found in other DAWs, but it's the whole package which I'm considering when you put all of these features together. Now before we get stuck into all of that, if you do like this kind of content, all about home recording, DAWs, gear reviews, plugin reviews, that kind of thing, then please do subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube so that you are notified about my future videos. Now let's get stuck into my top 5 reasons to use Studio One Professional.
5.
At number 5, I have the UI itself, which I find to be nicely uncluttered but still powerful. 3 buttons on the bottom right toggle the more commonly used interfaces Edit, Mix and Browse. Other handy interfaces are toggled above the tracks view. Things just seem to work on this UI in an intuitive way. Want to move a track in the track view? Drag it. Want to move it in the console view? Drag it. Does that fader area seem a little bit too small? Drag it bigger. Want to replicate a plugin with its current settings to another track? You guessed it, just drag it. Want to set the tempo? Just tap your tempo where it says tempo and Studio One figures it out for you. The list goes on. The interface also spreads nicely over 2 monitors, and I like to use my second monitor for a full mixing console or as the edit window when I'm working on the piano roll. Now, no UI is perfect for every person, but I personally find that Studio One's UI more often does what I expect it to, and that's why it's my pick for number 5.
4.
At number 4, I have latency. Latency is an annoying delay we get when audio we're recording takes time to be processed before we get to hear it. Put simply, if the delay is too long, there is a strange echo which makes it very hard to play or sing pieces. However, changing our settings so that the latency is very low can cause horrible pops and clicks in the audio. This is especially true when it comes to recording virtual instruments. Now, the amount of latency you have is mostly dependent on the capabilities of your audio interface and computer, so you don't often see much difference from one DAW to another. But Studio One has some nice little tricks up its sleeve: hardware direct monitoring and low latency instrument monitoring. In normal modes we get latency much like any other DAW, but in certain modes with compatible hardware we get near zero latency monitoring when recording audio. But what I find really useful again and again is the low latency monitoring for virtual instruments. This is particularly useful when songs are getting large and you're still playing virtual instrument parts. You just apply it to the instrument you're using and it immediately feels extremely responsive. Honestly, I don't know how this technology works, I just use it and it's wonderful.
3.
At number 3, I have audio editing. Again, I just feel that the UI workflow for doing intricate work on audio is really nice. Now let's take a look at this clip I have here. I'm going to select it, then I'm going to open the edit view. Now you don't have to do this. Everything I'm about to show you could be done up in the main track view. I just prefer to work in the edit view. So let's say I want to move this little phrase down here a little bit. I'll just cut out the endpoints and then holding Alt plus Control on the keyboard, I can drag it to a new position. But notice the endpoints aren't moving, just the audio. Okay, so I'm happy with the new position. I release and hit X on the keyboard and it automatically does the crossfades on each end for me, which I can still move around if I wish. Now let's chop another part up at the beginning. I'll add a fade here at the beginning and the end. In fact, let's adjust the curve of those fades just by dragging the lines around. And let's also adjust the overall gain on the clip by dragging down from the top. All very easy to do, all the changes are shown visually, and it's all non-destructive. And that's why I love editing audio in Studio One.
2,
At number 2, I have the stock plugins. Studio One Professional actually comes with 41 quality stock effects plugins, which will give you many reasons not to need third-party products. I won't cover them all here, but there are a few that I use often when I'm using Studio One. For example, the stock compressor is just a joy to use. The controls, to my mind, are logically laid out, and time again it gets the job done for me quickly. Not only that, but because it's native, I even get an indication of the compression it's performing near the fader in my console. And like many native plugins, I can actually make adjustments in the channel without having to open the full plugin. Another example of this would be the built-in EQ. Over and again, I find this quick and easy to use with controls that make sense without needing to read a manual. And if you're a guitarist, the built-in amp sim Ampire is another pleasure. You get a big selection of amps to choose from to match with a great selection of cabinets, all combined with a really wide choice of pedals to sculpt your sound. Ampire is perhaps the odd one out here, but there is a wonderful consistency of design amongst the effects plugins included with Studio One, and they all seem well thought out. It's really possible to record whole albums with just the stock plugins, and that's why this is my number 2 pick. Now, before we move on to my number 1 pick, I want to make some honourable mentions. The first of those is the integration with PreSonus hardware. I use a PreSonus Studio 192 interface which has onboard DSP effects such as compression and EQ. Not only can I control the gain of my inputs from Studio One itself, but I can also control those DSP effects all without leaving my DAW. And because of the link between the hardware and the software, if you ever decide to continue recording audio on a track later on, it will recall all the input settings I used. Now, put all this together with the control I have over my speakers, phones and talkback mic, all controlled within the DAW itself, and it's very compelling indeed. But you do need specific models of hardware, so that's why it didn't make the list. My second honourable mention has to be VCAs. VCAs are not at all unique to Studio One, but I love the way they're implemented. Let's say I have this little drum mix. I can select all the drums and have them controlled by one single VCA, making it possible to easily adjust the overall volume while maintaining the balance of the mix. This is a little different to using a bus since the volume adjustments are made at the source, so any post-fader effects are adjusted relatively as well. Not only is the mix scaled, but any automation on those channels is also scaled. And of course, the VCAs themselves can be automated. VCAs can also control other VCAs. Here I have my original drums controlled by a VCA, and let's make another VCA to control these guitars. Now let's add these VCAs to a master VCA controlling all instruments. Voila! Now I can control my overall mix volume relatively with one fader. There are so many other possible honourable mentions, but this video is already getting too big, so I'll just quickly say that I love the way that Studio One handles drum maps in a really simple way, and also the way it handles instruments with multiple outputs. Very, very easy indeed. Now, let's move on to my top pick.
1,
My number 1 pick is there because it's so useful and so unique to Studio One, and that's the project view. This could just as easily have been called the mastering view, since that is its main purpose. In this area you can load in your Studio One song files and start mastering. There are some awesome metering tools, an area for inserts for each track, and an area where you can apply effects to an entire album or EP. There is also an area where you can arrange your songs to do basic edits like crops and fades. But here is where it gets really clever. Let's say you're mastering a project and something about the mix of a song needs a fix. You can open that song from the project page, make a change to that mix, and when you're done, those changes will be indicated and you can apply them to the project. I find this to be a wonderfully integrated workflow. Added to this, you can use the project view to make final preparations for your single, EP or album. Things like adding song metadata, including artwork, and finally making a digital release with everything ready to upload to your distributor. This has all proved to be useful to me time and time again, and that's why it's my #1 pick. So that's my top 5 reasons to use Studio One Professional for music production. Now, if you're considering using Studio One, or perhaps you're already a user, let me know in the comments down below what your favorite features are. I'd love to hear about that. Now, if you did find this video helpful, then you can help me out by hitting the like button. That lets YouTube know that other people should watch this video. If you didn't like this video, go ahead and hit the dislike button twice. And if you like this kind of content, please don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube so that you are notified about my future videos. And I'll see you in the next video.